Hello, this is David Gomez, and I am working with the Latino Business Speaker Bureau, and we're doing these 31 meetings in 31 days that we're going to be featuring for our Hispanic Heritage Month. Today, I have Graciela Meibar, and let me just introduce Graciela. She's an amazing person. She's very successful, and I'm really excited to interview her today. So, Graciela, how are you doing?
I'm great, David. And first of all, thank you for doing this. And I think that it's important that we do celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with people who have had success, mostly not because we want to praise ourselves, but we want to inspire others along the way. And I think that's what's important for us to always remember.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when I first reached out to you, we were talking about stories. Mm-hmm. And I think that your story is inspiring, and I believe that it can help other people that, might find sometimes hesitating. But, when they see your story, when you see that you've, gotten somewhere where they want to be, it gives them ownership and say, hey, I can do it also. So as we're introducing you to some of our members, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So David, I was born in Cuba. Okay. And in 1970, came to the United States with my parents and my two brothers. Okay. We didn't do a typical Cuban thing. We landed in Miami from Cuba. However, 5 days later, we arrived in LA. Okay. And LA has been home ever since. Which, in a way, I would say I'm a West Coast Cuban. And yes, there is some nuances, some difference, but I am grateful that we came to LA because it has given me a very broad perspective of what it means to be a Hispanic in Los Angeles. We settled in LA and went to junior high and high school. And it was a high school counselor in Gardena High School who called me to her office to talk about my future. And as you can imagine, my parents had no clue about college, about the American way of doing things. So this woman, first of all, ignited that drive on me to go further. She saw my grades, she saw my study habits. So I went to the University of Southern California and I got a BA in international relations, started working at a company that sold parts to the aerospace industry. And at the same time, I went and got my MBA.
Wow.
I got my MBA and 6 months later, I started working at Mattel, the toy company.
Yeah, remember.
And that was a great experience, to be honest with you. Mattel had always been on my radar because it was here in the city of Hawthorne originally. And so went to work there, and within a couple of years, I was asked by the president of Latin America to join her team.
Oh, wow.
I spoke Spanish fluently. I understood a lot of the culture. And that opened so many doors for me. I went into sales. I went on to sales and marketing. And then eventually to be the general manager for a division of Latin America that managed 22 countries.
That's impressive.
I loved it. But in 2003, there was a change. And Mattel asked me if I would take on the role of diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
It was a new role. No one had done that role at Mattel before. And to be honest with you, I was a little hesitant at first But I have to say, David, that with that move, I found what I'm most passionate about is giving people opportunity and showing people that when you have a diverse group of people and they feel included, the sky's the limit in terms of potential and opportunities, both for the employee and for the company.
Yeah, that is true.
I held that role for 12 and a half years. And in 2014, I left Mattel and started my practice as a consultant and as a coach. One of the things that I'm most proud of is my coaching practice focuses a lot on Latinas and women of color in general, but a lot of Latinas. And I think that as a coach, I bring a different perspective than a normal, let's say, without any disrespect, a white coach for an executive or aspiring executive who is Latina. I bring my stories, I bring my perspectives, I understand the culture. And to me, that makes a huge difference in terms of guiding them, understanding them. And so that's my story up to today, David.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things that really captured my attention when I was looking at your profile. You speak about giving people a voice. And I think that is very important. And I know from personal experience, sometimes as a Latino, you know, you need to see that, witness someone accomplish something great. And it's very empowering. So as you were working in your coaching and development, tell us a little more about the connection, because you're talking about a bridge, and how are the ways that you connect with those women, and you know, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that, because I think that's something very interesting for our audience.
I'm going to be honest with you. Since I began, when I was in the process of my certification for a coach, which it was a 9-month program, one of the topics they brought out was that we should focus on something that we're passionate about. And they kept talking about find your niche, find that thing that is your unique value proposition. And so the more I thought about it, the more I started thinking, I think I can make a difference with minorities, both minorities, executives, and especially women. The experience that I built as the leader of diversity and inclusion at Mattel opened me to learn so much about other ethnicities, other cultures, different points of view, different styles. And so with that, I thought, okay, there is an opportunity here for me, because also, as I looked at who else was in the room during this coaching certification program, I was one of 2 Latinas and one of 4 people of color.
Okay.
Then I went to a coaching conference, and I could count with one hand the number of African Americans in the room, and I could count with 2 hands the number of Latinos. And I thought, okay, we need to change we need to change the entry point to coaching for people that have the knowledge to help other people and the inspiration to do so, but at the same time are culturally relevant to their potential client.
Right.
So you know, when you think about coaching, most of the coaching is done for top executives in the major corporations because the company wants them to develop a certain skill, improve something, or they're struggling with communications, as an example, and they want the coach to help them. But I think as we begin to see more and more people of color in executive positions, there will be a demand for coaches who also look like them,
right,
who also understands them.
Yeah.
And I think that I want to inspire also people to join the coaching profession, because I think that there is a need for us as people of color, as Latinos, to do this type of work. Because I had one client in particular that came through me through a referral, because this woman, a Latina, only wanted to work with a Latina coach.
Yeah.
And as we discussed this after we started working together in the engagement, I realized my thinking is correct. There is an opportunity here, and she and I developed some great work. We did some great work together to help her, but I was always conscious of her role also as a Latina, with her family, with her extended family, and also with herself and her values.
Yeah, and that proximity in culture helps a lot to bridge some of those you know, communication barriers as well.
Absolutely, David. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so now something that you mentioned that it really caught my attention as you were describing your you know, when you came to the United States, you mentioned that you that someone saw, you know, what you have done and saw your potential. And
Yeah.
something that I think is very interesting to us all is, you know, when do you start that journey? Like, is it a thought? Is it an event? Or at what point do you decide, you know, I am going to go out there and succeed in the world? Because I think that is key to a lot of people.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think it was a combination of many things, David. In high school, I took French also as an additional language that I wanted to take. And I took 4 years of French. Now, don't ask me to speak French to you now, because the fact is that I don't practice it, and I'm bad. However, within that class, there was a group of us, including a Chinese American, Mexican American, a couple of Caucasian students, and I bonded with them. They all had very clear aspirations for their future.
Mm-hmm.
And this is beginning on the 10th grade. While at that moment, I didn't have a clear vision as to college and what was ahead of me. With their influence, I think that I started seeing, wow, there's so much more than just finishing high school.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, my father, a typical Cuban man, except for the following. He would tell me, his daughter, I want you to fall in love. I want you to be happy in marriage and all of that. But I never want you to depend on a man. Mm-hmm. I want you to be self-sufficient, because you never know what the future will bring. And to be honest with you, I thought that my father was ahead of his time for saying those things to me. And he said it more than once. So it was my friends, it was my father and my mom too, but especially my father. And then this high school counselor who came to me and said, hey, what are your plans for college? And me telling her, I don't know. And she said, let's work on a plan. And it was that woman, a white woman to be exact, that opened a whole new world to me. So I think it was friends, parents, and this high school counselor that brought it all, made it all real for me.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, my father was a farmer in Cuba and my mom was a homemaker. However, in my family, and they stayed back in Cuba, there was one university professor in the University of Havana. He was a historian. And there were a few high-level professionals. So even though they stayed in Cuba, that also stayed with me. The fact that these folks, my family, had gone further than what was typically expected for a family that grew up in rural Cuba, you know, in the countryside of Cuba.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just amazing the advice that he provided you.
Yeah.
I think that's, like you said, it's ahead of his time, but it's very true.
But it's very true. And I think he, you know, as his only girl,
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to make sure that she was, you know, she was self-sufficient. Yeah. I would say that was the key word, self-sufficient.
Yeah. Self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little more towards, you know, in recent years. Could you share with us a strategy that was key for you to achieve your success once you were moving on and start getting those director jobs? What strategy, one or maybe two, that you could share with us?
Sure. To be honest with you, when I first started working in corporate America, and in particular at Mattel, yes, I was a Latina. Yes, I was proud of all of that. However, I sort of toned it down because, you know, most of my peers were Caucasian, white. And so I know that with my personality too, because I'm very extroverted, mm-hmm. I can take over a room with ease. So I learned to tone it down. I learned to not be as expressive as I could be. But what happened was that when I joined the Latin American division, mm-hmm. I could be myself. And that's when I decided from now on, my focus and how I'm going to, I think, succeed, is based on being myself, utilizing all my skills. And one of the reasons that I joined the Latin American division is because I was fluent in Spanish. Mm-hmm. My parents insisted that we did not lose the ability to speak Spanish fluently. And through that work that I did for Latin America for 18 years, I also improved my quote unquote business Spanish.
Okay.
So today I am able to coach people around the world also in Spanish. Yeah. And to me, that is also something very valuable. So showing up as authentically me, mm-hmm. within the confines of corporate and all of that, but the essence of me has always to be present.
Yes.
Who I am and what I represent, my values, my speaking up when I saw that somebody was not being treated right. The sense of just, if I'm gonna work here, I need to be proud of working here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important, because like you were saying, I mean, you have all of these experiences who make you who you are. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you kind of suppress a little bit of who you are, you're not your whole self.
No.
And that is not a recipe for success, you know?
No, it's not. I call it acting, David.
Right.
And I think that actors get paid a lot of money for acting.
Right.
But I don't think executives should be paid a lot of money for acting, because acting requires energy and concentration and focus on the role that you're playing at that moment. When you do that, you're taking away energy from being more innovative, creative, and sharing thoughts that are just spontaneous to you.
Right.
If I'm pretending to be someone, I always have to be that person that I'm pretending to be.
Right. And if you succeeded with what's inside.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more towards now. So one thing that you were mentioning was embracing our culture. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about, how do you keep your Hispanic heritage alive?
By celebrating the traditions of my roots, by being a proud Cuban American. I celebrate, I'm definitely an American. I became an American citizen when I was 18, but I'm also Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a citizen of LA.
Right.
My friends are not Cuban, not exclusively Cuban. It's everyone that is in LA. I have friends that represent Mexicans, all Central America, South America. And because of my work, when I was in Latin America, I created such incredible friendships.
Mm-hmm.
So I celebrate my heritage by being proud of who I am, by not shying away from being myself in mixed company, by cooking, which will never be as good as my mom's, but I'm pretty good. And by sharing what it means to, I'm writing a story of my parents and our journey from Cuba to the United States. And to me, it's something that I'm writing for my nieces and nephews, because I want them to be proud of their grandparents. Mm-hmm. And that side of the family, that if I don't put this in writing for them, it might get lost after a generation, an additional generation. And I want to maintain that live in them.
Yeah.
So it's by, to be honest with you, I celebrate it every day by being me, no matter where I am.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I get a little emotional.
It's understandable. That's just honesty and, you know, being genuine, you know.
And you know, they say, you know, there's a lot of cliches that Latins are good dancers and love good music and good food. Yeah, I'll confess to all of that. Besides also being a successful executive.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So let me just ask you one last question. and let's make it two.
Okay.
My first question is, what advice would you give another Latino leader for them to pursue their success? You know, if they don't feel like they have a voice, your advice, you know, to keep them going, and then after that, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of what you're working on right now, and you know,
Yeah.
that would be good.
For those, I've had many clients that come to me with the notion of being an imposter at work.
Wow.
And that sort of gets me all the time, because again, we go back to that notion of who are you? And are you contributing the best that you can while you feel like an imposter? So we work a lot on why does he or she feel like an imposter?
Wow.
What's preventing them from it? What is the culture in which they're working?
Mm-hmm.
And is that culture something they want to retire from? Is that culture their calling? And while I you know, I don't necessarily want to discourage people to leave their current job, I, however, want them to find that drive that makes them authentic in what they do and successful.
Wow.
So to me is, let's find your authenticity in terms of who you are, what are you want to be remembered by,
Mm-hmm.
and let's put a plan in motion to get there. To be honest with you, that's one of the biggest challenges and it always gets me when people say that to me.
Wow. And that is actually very general. Like everybody's life should be lived that way specifically, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So since the dreadful death of George Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
my coaching practice has taken a new turn, which I love, but I also find sometimes gut crunch, you know.
Yeah.
And it's that I'm coaching a lot of folks of all ethnicities and races around diversity and inclusion. How to have the difficult conversations.
Yeah.
How to stop that imposter. How to be a good ally.
Yeah.
How to tell people, no, I'm not your answer to everything, and so forth. So a lot of my work is right now around that. And to be honest with you, I'm loving the work, but at the same time, some of the stories are incredibly sad at times.
Yeah.
But I think that the willingness for people to come out now and talk about these things
Mm-hmm.
gives me hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully, because there's so many young people involved now, I see that there's a potential for change more than ever.
Yeah.
So my work is a lot around diversity, inclusion, as a consultant, as a coach, and I'm inspired to write more stories.
Yeah.
And I'm inspired to share more of myself. And one of the things that I also tell executives to do, especially Latinos in general, is go out there and be a role model for others.
Yeah, that's good advice.
I love going to high schools, to be honest with you, and talking to students in high school, because just like that counselor, college advisor help me? I think that by kids seeing someone that looks like them, yeah, and understands them, that they made it, they now see a potential for themselves. And I love doing that. Yeah, I love doing that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. I created a vision statement a few years back, and it says, I want to be a source of inspiration and a resource to underprivileged kids of all ages, to help them identify their dream and achieve it.
Wow.
And I think that we all need more inspiration, but also alongside with the inspiration, the resources, yeah, to make it happen.
Yeah. This is so exciting.
Thank you, David. Got a little emotional there. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. And I think, you know, having something like that put together for kids is just awesome. Yeah. It's a great undertaking for sure. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss the recording. Okay. So, give me just 1 second.
Of course.
And I want us to continue just a tad bit, but let me just conclude it.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Graciela. It's been amazing to talk to you, and all of your stories are fascinating. And I am very excited to have this out there for some other people, some of our members, and maybe even you know, kids that are in high school, or you know, they can see this story, your story, and they feel empowered, and they feel like, you know what, I can do that. I can do that too. Yeah. So, like I said, thank you so much for your time, and
my pleasure.
I appreciate you.
Of course, thank you.